There's a lot of topics on my mind lately, one of which is this Gamestop thing that everyone's talking about. If you don't know right now, there's this program that apparently has been around for ages and ages and ages at Gamestop called the Circle of Life, or something like that. And essentially what it does is it makes it so employees at GameStop need to put more of a push or more of a focus on used products, and that they get penalized for selling new products, and so they can't meet goals. And it's just like the icing on the cake for all the people that really are very against GameStop. And I understand the logic behind it. I even myself at times have problems with GameStop. But today what I wanted to do is I really wanted to talk about the pros and cons of GameStop, not from necessarily an employee's mind or per se idea of what they see, because obviously they see it. There's tons of articles out there that have interviews, and there's some of you fellow YouTube people that used to work at GameStop or worked at game stores and have their own experiences. And so I kind of wanted to talk about the pros and cons as a consumer, and why that will, in my opinion, cripple not only the games market for retro games specifically, but also GameStop as a whole. GameStop I don't think is doing very well, and I think a big part of that is the way that employees are treated. So we're gonna go through a list of basically just like pros and cons for GameStop and discuss. And again, I want to start this off by saying this is my opinion. But in addition to that, I'm talking about experiences that I've had as a consumer, as a game store, not GameStop, but game store employee and manager, and also just an overall understanding of how business works. When I was in college, I worked at a game store called Game Crazy. It was a franchise that was built off of Hollywood Video. And Game Crazy was up and coming. Their main competitors were GameStop or EB Games or whatever. I guess that was probably right around that time when EB Games and GameStop finally fully merged. And my experience with Game Crazy was much different than I think a lot of GameStop employees were facing. So we had pre-orders because we did sell new games. Game Crazy, the way it worked was they sold retro, but they also sold new games as well. So we had NES, Super NES, Genesis, TurboGrafx, Sega CD, all that stuff. And then on top of that, we were selling at what was at the time brand new stuff like GameCube, Xbox, PS2. All of that stuff was current when I worked there. So we did have pre-order incentives, and we would get a commission based off of if we hit our pre-order mark. Same thing we had these MVP cards. It was kind of like GameStop's Pro Rewards a little bit. And with MVPs, you had to hit a certain amount, and the more you sold, if you hit your quota, so to speak, then you would get a percentage of the income. If you didn't hit the quota, then you wouldn't get the percentage. So that was an incentive to offer people money. So I think the first con for GameStop is that they don't do that with their employees. And if you're making minimum wage and you have no incentive to sell these added benefits other than to keep your job, I get it from an employee perspective, or a big employee, like a manager, a district manager, regional manager, etc. They're kind of funneling this down to these employees, and they're kind of being like, all right, you have to sell this amount, otherwise, you're going to be in trouble or whatever. And from what I understand, I've spoken with a lot of GameStop employees, and it's very mixed. Like, some GameStop employees will be like, you just need to do your damn job. But at the same aspect, the same trait of it, a lot of other employees are saying it's unfair because they have to, kind of play the system in order to get pre-orders and all that. And it's really slimy and scummy that you have to go that route, that you have to do that in order to make your numbers, to keep your job. So for me, if you're not doing your job because you're not, like, those sort of incentives, as far as like selling for the company, you should be getting some sort of financial commission out of it, or maybe some kind of bonus check if you hit a certain amount. And so because they did that at Game Crazy, I couldn't ever imagine seeing myself working at a game store like GameStop where they don't do that. Now, with this in mind, and with this information in hand, there are so many game stores that are out now. I mean, gaming is bigger than it ever has been. So to work at a store like GameStop, I mean, I definitely feel for the people that do. That must be pretty tough. And I've been there because I know what it's like to have to push pre-orders and to push these rewards cards and all that stuff. Like, I get it. So I do sympathize with that. You got to be good at sales. If you're not good at sales, it's not the kind of job for you. But at the same time, the amount of work that you're doing for this type of work, I mean, you could also just go to like McDonald's and make the same amount, or Taco Bell, or whatever fast food joint or whatever you want to do. And you end up making about the same amount of money for the most part, maybe a little less, but at the same time, you have a job, and you're not, you go to work and you do your job and you leave, and that's it. That's how the job goes. Or you get a job at like Walmart or Kmart or Best Buy or whatever. So I do sympathize with that. I think that GameStop employees are not paid as much as they should be, and I don't feel that that's right. So that is one thing I will say as a con regarding GameStop, is the way that they treat employees regarding commissions. I think that commissions, you should get commissions on pre-orders, you should get commissions on maybe strategy guides, like if you sell a certain amount of strategy guides. I think that there's a more creative way for GameStop to reapproach attracting people to work. And I would imagine at those types of places, there's huge turnover rates. Like, there's gotta be. You gotta figure, if I know on the retail side of things with cellular providers, they offer commission to their employees. They have a certain amount that they make for salary, because they're doing their job, they're putting in their time, and they're selling stuff. And so they have numbers to make too. And if they don't meet their numbers, if you just keep not making your numbers, then you're gonna be in some big trouble. But overall, you do get a number of chances, and that's one of the things that's kind of a pro, is if you're not good at sales, you probably shouldn't be working at GameStop. So I feel that GameStop probably doesn't hide this. They're probably, it's well versed, I'm sure, in their training for what they need to do. I think that it's slimy. This is a con, by the way. I think that it's slimy that the way that they're making employees do this sort of stuff, but not really telling them to do it. And for like managers to get fired over this kind of thing, like I get it. It happens. It's retail. Like, it's crappy, but it does happen. But now I kind of want to move on to a different aspect of this whole conversation, which is retro games. So as you know, GameStop started selling retro games, and they're doing it primarily on their website with a few like stores. They're just kind of testing the waters to see if it's going to go well. Originally, a lot of people were against this. People were really like, no, there's going to be, what do they have for regulating, to making sure and inspecting carts to make sure that they're not repros. And I've heard such terrible horror stories about people buying games, they pop it in, like buy Chrono Trigger, they pop it in, and it's Madden 94. So then they call GameStop and they're like, this is Madden 94. I want to return this. This is ridiculous. And GameStop has been like, well, you can't do that because we don't know if you put that board in. All right, so now you're going to accuse your customers? That's really scummy. So that sort of thing is really bad. Like, that's awful. But here's what I will say about the benefits of how this retro scene will work in the end, and how I think personally it's going to help retro gamers and retro game collectors not only beef up their collection, but also, when it is legitimate, but also bring down prices. So GameStop, they have all this stuff on their website, and they list all these games, and people go and you can go through the list and see what's available, see what's not available, etc. The games that are available actually have a really good selection for the most part. I mean, you're not going to get your heavy hitters like your Wild Guns and your Ninja Gaiden trilogies and those types of games, but like, I recently took a chance and bought, they had Ghost in the Shell for PlayStation 1 available. So it's the kind of thing where I'm like, you know what, I'll take the chance, I'll take the hit and buy it and see if it's complete, because I've got a lot of retro games friends in the local area that have bought from GameStop, and the prices are lower than video game price charting and eBay and Amazon and all that. The prices are lower. Like, GameStop is being very competitive with these prices for these games. To give you an example, the Ghost in the Shell game that I bought, normally it's like a $60 game complete, $30 loose. I bought it for like $19, and that was after a slight discount of maybe like 10% or 16% or something like that. So I gotta say, like, their pricing is really spot on, and what's really cool, and why I think that the retro game scene could possibly be seeing the overturn of retro games sales to start dipping, at least as far as like the big time like Nintendo type franchises and the big third parties like Capcom, Konami, etc., is the pricing charts that GameStop uses are public. Anybody can go look them up. But a lot of companies, especially these third party chains or these mom and pop chains that kind of grew up and got bigger, a lot of them use GameStop as their main kind of like competition. And to give you an example, Game Exchange is a franchise that was built off of Walmart, and they have game stores all over the country. We have like 3 or 4 of them here in Connecticut. Actually, maybe 5. But we've got a lot. But I've noticed that their prices are dipping on games to match what's at GameStop. And I've spoken with a few of the managers there and a few of the employees, and they confirmed that. They said, yeah, we base our numbers off of GameStop, so GameStop's really bringing our numbers down. To give you a couple examples, Warcraft, I think it's Warcraft 2 for the Saturn, was like a $60 game, something like that. GameStop has it priced at like $14.99. Game Exchange dropped their price down to match GameStop's. Mega Man X Command Mission is a game I see all the time for the GameCube in Game Exchange. Usually it has like a fake, cover or whatever, but it's there. The game's there. Was previously like maybe a $15, $16 game, jumped up to about $26, $27 if I recall. Now, because of GameStop, it's back down to about $12.99, $14.99, something like that. So those are just a few examples of some games that, their prices have been cut quite significantly. Bloody Roar, Primal Fury for the GameCube, that's another one that's right now, it's like a $12 game at any Game Exchange. And so it's pretty shocking. So I think if things keep going the way that they are, there's a possibility that maybe price charting will, for videogame.pricecharting.com, will also bring down their prices. And what we could have potentially is a huge drop in prices overall because of GameStop. So that's a huge pro that you got to admit. I don't like, it's a con that they are, I guess you could say, conning people because they're not doing what needs to be done. They don't have experts come in and inspect these boards, so all these people are making repros of really expensive games and sending them off or whatever. It's not so much happening with disc-based games so much, but my advice to those who have done that is don't say anything about it being fake. If you spot a fake, just return it. That's my best advice, because they do take a return policy. They'll just return it, and that's it. It'll go back in the same way that it went out. So I would imagine that if they're not verifying the games, if they're not even popping in the carts to make sure that what is on the label is the same thing as on the game, there's a good possibility that that's the case. So it's really kind of all up in the air right now when it comes to video games and retro games specifically. GameStop, I've never really had a problem with picking up pre-orders. Usually it takes them a little while to find the game, because when I do pre-order games, it's usually like games like, for example, when I just recently pre-ordered Shantae Half Genie Hero. And pre-ordered that, took them a while to find the game in the store, but they found it, whatever. So, you also sometimes get really cool pre-order bonuses. It's a lot less than it used to be back in the day. That's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But that's kind of the reason, that's one of the things that I do, is I'll pre-order, and if I do buy a strategy guide with it, I get 20% off I think the game and the guide if you buy it through GameStop, with whatever. So I don't buy used from GameStop, very, very rarely. The only time I will is like super dirt cheap games, like for the Wii, for example. Or, for years I bought like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance stuff. PSP, PlayStation Portable games, Xbox 360 games are dirt cheap. But I don't buy like, if a PS4 game is used at GameStop, I'll just pay the extra $5, $6, $7 or whatever and buy the new version. I'm not gonna mess around with that. So, and kind of going back to our original point, the fact that they're kind of screwing over gamers by, going in, trying to sell a $54 game when the game is on sale brand new for $29, that's pretty scummy. But at the same time, I do empathize with the people that are doing it, and they're doing it really just to keep their job. And that shouldn't be the way that it is. Now, the only other major con that I have for GameStop is, and this is my biggest pet peeve about GameStop of all time. This is just the worst. GameStop, when they have a game that comes in that doesn't come in often, or if it's a brand new title, if they didn't get a lot of copies or they only have one copy left, they gut the game. So they open it up, they take the plastic off, they open it up, they take the contents out, they put the contents in like a little plastic baggie, or they put the contacts in like, the game will go in like a little slip, paper case or whatever. And they do that, and they put it behind the register, and they put the last copy out on the thing. And what I do is I will bring the game over, and if it's the last copy, I'll ask them, do you have any more? And if they say no, I go, do you have any more in other stores? And they'll, half the time when I ask that, they're like, well, why? Like, it's a new game. Like, it is brand new, we swear. And I'm like, no. That's not brand new. Brand new is I get to open the game, not you open the game. That is my biggest pet peeve with GameStop. And here's the worst part of it, is that even if the game is not played, whatever the case may be, you also gotta know GameStop employees, and again, I don't know because I don't work at GameStop, but when I worked at Game Crazy, we would take games home. If we were given loose copies of games, we would take games home. Or if we had open copies of games, we would take them home, try them out just to get familiar with the product, and then we would bring them back or whatever the case may be. GameStop may do the same thing. I don't know 100%, but if they do the same thing, that's really scummy if that's the game that they're taking, because then that is a used game. And you're selling a game that has been opened, and you're selling it for the same exact price that the brand new sealed, factory sealed copy goes for. Now, most Joe Schmoes are not gonna care. They're gonna be like, whatever, that's fine, just give me the game, I want the game. But I will not buy games that GameStop sells that are gutted. I will not. Even if it's the last copy, I will not buy it. So that is a huge pet peeve for me. That's a major con, and that is just bad business. So there's a reason why GameStop is, a lot of people are of the opinion that GameStop's kind of going under. And I can honestly see that happen within the next 10 years. I could see that the business may be possibly crumbling. There's so much competition out there. And, businesses like that, especially the way they do, if they're treating their employees like that, it's not good. My best advice to people who do want to work at GameStop, I don't recommend, putting yourself in that position. If you want to work at a game store, there's tons of other mom and pop game stores out there that pay the same amount that don't have that kind of criteria that you need to meet. just do a little research. And you know what? If you can't find a game store job, find something else in the games industry that might work for you. And if you're young, if you're like a 16, 17-year-old or whatever, you know, find any job. But, you know, just working at GameStop just to, you know, hang out and, you know, talk about games and all that stuff, for the amount of money that you have to get and for the amount of headache that it's going to cause you, it's just simply not worth it, in my opinion, personally. So I think that if more people kind of follow that ideology, I think more and more people will stop trying to work at GameStop. And you know, if GameStop can't hire people because nobody wants to work there, that's going to be a problem, and it's going to be pretty obvious that they need to change something. So I'm curious what you guys think about all of these topics regarding the pros and cons of GameStop as a whole. I wanted to do like a quick video just to kind of discuss the subject with you guys. You know, there's a lot of people that are very one-sided, very pro, very, you know, con, and I kind of wanted to talk about all of them, and that's the reason why I made this video today. So leave a comment below. I'm curious what you guys think about this whole GameStop thing and all the content and information that I've discussed here. You know, retro games prices dipping because of GameStop underpricing games. You know, the practices for the employees and you know, the sales practices that they've been going through, the lack of commission, gutting games. I want to know what you guys think about all these things. Do you shop at GameStop? And if you do, you know, what are your thoughts on shopping there? What's your experience been? Or if you worked at GameStop before, same thing, leave a comment below. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later for another YouTube dongled rant.